today I signed an executive order. We're going to keep families together, but the border is going to be just as tough as it's been.
After days of protests, images that sparked outrage and mounting pressure, today President Trump reacting, signing an executive order to place an end to the separation of migrant families at the border.
We are keeping a very powerful border, and it continues to be a zero tolerance. We have zero tolerance for people that enter our country illegally.
But for the thousands of migrant children that have been separated from their families, there's no telling how many more nights they will have to spend alone.
How difficult is it to reunify them?
When the family arrives, you have one immigration case. When you separate them, you then create two separate immigrations. So now the child or children have one case, the parent has another. The parent can get deported and their children left behind.
It happened to 10-year-old Samuel. He spent the last 8 months away from his family. In his red hoodie and a blue backpack this morning, a final piggyback ride from the American foster family he's lived with since October. We were with him at the airport before his flight back to Guatemala, where he will reunite with his father, who brought him here illegally and was deported. Samuel's foster parents, Carl and Jen, are still fostering other children, so we agreed not to show their faces. And we've been asked not to show Samuel's face until he's been reunited with his family.
I would say he was almost in shock.
He was afraid to eat. He was afraid to look. His clothes were soiled. He wouldn't use the bathroom when he was transported here, so he had urinated and defecated in his clothing.
Samuel is just one of thousands of children who have experienced this trauma, traveling countless miles only to be separated from their family. According to Customs and Border Protection, more than 2,300 children were separated from their families between May 5th and June 9th. Their separation, a result of the Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy crackdown on illegal border crossings that began last April. Those separated children were placed in the care of the Department of Health and Human Services, while their parents remained in the custody of the Department of Homeland Security. But neither ICE nor HHS have numbers on how many parents have already been deported or how many families have been reunited. One of the lifelines may be the number some children have committed to memory, like 6-year-old Alison Jimena Valencia Madrid from El Salvador, seen here with her mother. After being separated, she begs the supervisor to call her aunt. Allison's aunt telling ProPublica the conversation with her 6-year-old niece was the hardest moment in my life, adding she's crying and begging me to go get her. She says, "I promise I'll behave, but please get me out of here. I'm all alone." The haunting audio, first obtained by ProPublica, now a symbol of the suffering and confusion children endure when they are separated from their parents.
Child internment camps, that's what I said.
And sparking outrage among politicians. Last night, the president had a closed-door meeting with House Republicans to discuss immigration legislation. The president reportedly telling them that his daughter Ivanka showed him images of children in detention facilities and encouraged him to end the policy. After exiting the meeting, he was confronted by several Democratic congressmen.
They're separating the children. Mr. President, don't you have kids?
Today's signing, a striking reversal. Just days ago,
You can't do it through an executive order.
President Trump did exactly what he said he could not and he would not do. He ended this policy with a stroke of a pen. It was a stunning reversal. Just days ago, he said he couldn't do this by executive order, yet that's exactly what he did, completely proving himself wrong.
So I imagine that even with this executive order that was just signed, you still don't believe that immediately these families are going to be reunified.
No, my initial reaction is really gratified. They're going to stop taking children away. Following that, you have all of these questions. There are some parents that are at the county jail. There are some parents that are in a detention facility. And then if the parent is in the detention facility, are we going to move the parent from a detention facility that is just for single adults to a detention facility that allows the parent to have the child?
In a normal situation, that gets very messy, and now we're talking about more than 2,300 kids.
Correct. My hope is that they would reunite them.
But for now, the children remain separated. Some of the youngest children are being held here in Brownsville, Texas, one of at least 3 so-called tender age facilities. A visiting doctor saying she found traumatized children, one crying inconsolably, and this woman sends deacons to pray with the girls in that shelter.
Every single child gets up and begins to pray to God in a loud voice. Please, God, send me back to my parents. I want to see my mommy. I want to see my daddy.
Other children have been transported here to the remote countryside of southern Texas.
You can see it's on the other side of this green fencing here. There's a soccer field there with the soccer goals, and then the actual facility off in the distance.
Agencies like Bethany Christian Services in Michigan have been struggling to reunite these families who have been spread across the nation.
What's new about this is we're not sure how long it would take to reunite a child with a parent who's in a detention center. And so we would need contact with that parent. Usually when separations are unexpected, the parent may not have made a plan with another family member in the United States. You know, would you take our child if we weren't available? Or they maybe, you know, didn't prepare the child for that.
It was Bethany Christian Services who placed Samuel with his foster parents in Michigan.
So I do hear a few stories about the detention facilities. They talk about mats on the floor, not a lot of food, and of course, crying and fear. And they most often come extraordinarily dirty and lice and all sorts of things.
But those detention centers and the foster care are supposed to be temporary.
The reason it took so long for Samuel to be reunited with his father is that Samuel had to go through the voluntary departure process, which means that an immigration judge had to rule on his petition for a voluntary departure. And then we needed to coordinate his departure with the embassy from his country and with ICE so that he was, you know, appropriately reunified with his dad and safely reunified with his dad.
At the airport, a mix of emotions now that Samuel will finally see his father again. Samuel's foster family gets in their last kisses and promises that this goodbye isn't final. As an ICE agent takes Samuel through security, the 10-year-old again without a family for his 8-hour journey.
Children who've been separated from their parents will have to go through getting that healing done. So the relationship with their family, with their parent, will they be able to trust that parent again?
Back in Guatemala, his father, Anacleto Cortez, waits in tears. He tells my colleague Alex Perez that his heart is hurting. He says he is happy his son will be home soon after those 8 months apart.
I may look like I'm okay, he says, but my heart has been in pain, hurting because of this.
And then finally, the tearful look in his eyes and confusion on his face. The room filled with government officials. Samuel overwhelmed, appearing shell-shocked, going back to a family he loves and having to leave the American family he also loves. For Nightline, I'm Gio Benitez in El Paso, Texas.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.